Urban Renewal Commission meeting. Citizens' comments. Mr. Edgar.
Committee. I'm Paul Edgar. I'm a land use chair of the Panema Neighborhood Association and a concerned citizen and a candidate for mayor of Oregon City. I'm here only on behalf of being a concerned citizen, and I asked to try to get information on urban renewal and how and where the money came from. Of the city, and it seemed like it was quite an ordeal, so I went to the county's assessor's office and got the latest information directly from the assessor's office. That's what you'll see up above. But before I start going down through this, what's important is that the present value as calculated at the time that the plan area was established was set at $50,711. $50,711,900. Today, the current value is $160,000,005. This gives us $109 million worth of excess value, which in effect can roll into the urban renewal district in funding. And as you will see here in this distribution, for the 2010-2011 division of taxes, we're going to see that the urban renewal district will receive $1,912,000 as is reflected up here. But it's important to see where this money comes from, because my hypothetical question I asked of the assessor's office was, if there was no urban renewal district, where would the money go? And so this is exactly where it would go. So $454,000 would go to the general fund of Oregon City. $113,000 would go to paying off Oregon City bonds, probably the fire station. $60,009 is being taken away from Clackamas Community College, and $11,000 is being taken away from Clackamas Community College bonds. Clackamas County in itself, we're taking $262,000 from it. But if we go down the line, Clackamas County Fire District, you can see they're paying a significant part of the money that is going into urban renewal and the bond issues of Clackamas County Fire. Oregon City School District is absorbing $542,000, and $154,000 which would be going towards the retirement of their bonds, much of which it was bonded out for the building of the Oregon City High School and that campus. But as you can see here, there is a cost, and then there's a benefit. And we have to come back, and it's the prioritization for all monies. Is it justified? And when we start talking about taking money away from the fire district, and the board of the Clackamas County Fire District right now just recently passed a board hearing on this.
You need to. Yeah.
Well, I think that I want to present all of this information that I got to have it as part of public record, so that people in the city and the citizens don't have to fight to gather it and understand the real facts. And honesty and integrity has got to be part of the process, and this is an attempt to bring this to the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing we didn't do is roll call, and I didn't see it on the. So. Oh, I'm sorry. Before you do that, Commissioner Norris would like to.
I think, since Paul said that it's important to have the factual information out, I think it's also important to understand that without investment in our blighted areas, those monies would not be available to those agencies, and the increment would not be available for reinvestment. So when we closed our Hilltop Urban Renewal District, we had completed projects, and all of that money went back to those districts. And I think Oregon City has been very, very responsible in the way that it's used urban renewal. So I think we have to remember that those areas that we've been investing in now would have perhaps had flat values had we not done that. So those numbers are because of renewal.
If you take the 3% per year since 1980, it's compounded.
Yeah. It's too complex to talk about it side by side.
It equals pretty much close to what the current value is. So it really has not been impacted very much because it's just automatic extensions compounding them. So in downtown urban renewal district, that's not necessarily the start.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Syke.
Commissioner Nocita?
Here.
Commissioner Neely?
Here.
Commissioner West? Here. Commissioner Smith? Commissioner Norris?
Here.
Commissioner Walters? Commissioner Shaw?
Here.
Commissioner Crocker? Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Chair Slack?
Here. Thank you. Future agenda items? I'm sorry. Oh no, we have to. Do we have some other?
I didn't see it.
I'm just doing what I have on the screen. We have another.
Ms. Trish Williams.
Okay. Ms. Williams? Okay, if you give us your name and the city you reside in.
I have your own building across the street. I recently made an application for a grant to have some repairs and upgrades done to it to help make it livable. And I've completed the application. I've gone through the entire process. I've also gone through the review process where it gets routed through different departments. I understood that I'd be heard on that tonight, and I was told at 4:20 this afternoon that they wouldn't be submitting my application because the council will only hear these applications when they're submitted en masse with other people that are applying. The other applicants that are currently in process have chosen not to complete their application, and as a result, my application is being grouped with theirs, and nobody can tell me even when I can expect to have this matter heard.
It seemed to me that we were doing it. Were we going to do it 4 times a year?
It was. I think you agreed on 3 times a year.
3 times a year. I knew that there was a.
And part of the direction that the staff received was that we get a number of applications, so you had something to compare your applications to. And that, I think that was probably the message that you got. But
basically, I was just looking for a date. It's going to start raining soon, and I'd like to get my building painted.
Do we have a date?
sorry?
Do we have a date to hear those? Do we have a deadline for those applications to be in?
I believe we contacted 2 other applicants that submitted several months ago but have incomplete applications, and we're trying to get those 2 applications together with this 3rd one so we could bring a package of 3. But we could bring this.
Well, I was always a little concerned. It's a little more complicated than just saying you want to group these together. Then you end up sometimes you in a situation where somebody's ready to do something, but if they're grouped in, we haven't had a strong, like last year at this time we had a about spent most of our money.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't know.
I can make you spend some more.
Is everybody in agreement that we could?
I think we need to set a date.
You can bring this forward at the next urban renewal meeting if you'd like.
Yeah, but let's also come up with some dates if everybody agrees that, whatever's in by that date, let's encourage people to be in by that date, but let's not hold, we could theoretically hold this one up till June if nobody.
Yeah.
So.
Let's set the 3 dates for the.
Is everybody in agreement with that? Yes. So if you give us.
So at the next meeting, we'll have some suggestions for those 3
But
dates.
I think that at this point in time, this lady should, her package along with anybody else that's ready ought to be presented.
Well, if it's 3 times a year, that's every 4 months. So the fiscal year starting July 1, so July, August, September, October, we're on track to be listening to this pretty quick for first quarter, the first trimester.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll bring this forward at the next meeting, and we'll also have some suggestions for the other dates.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments? Citizen comment? No. Adoption of the agenda. Future agenda items. We already went through that. Adoption of the agenda. Do we have any changes we need to make to the agenda? Okay, moving right along. General business. Item 5A. Termination and conditional reinstatement agreement.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Slack. This is a second draft of the original draft you saw at the last meeting. We've made some changes based on input that we received from the Commission and also from Clackamas Cove LLC. Our counsel for this, Steve Janik, was supposed to be here tonight, but I'll.
He's right there.
Well, I'm going to try to summarize the changes, so I don't have to. But and also, Clackamas Cove, they are here, and I think Mr. Woodley is here. So if you have questions of them, they are available. And I guess I'll turn over to Steve Janik.
Sorry, I was a little bit late. Traffic is terrible.
You don't think you're as important as the president, do you?
Yeah, that's what caused the problem. The changes, I asked the staff to give you copies of the clean red line versions, so you should have those which illustrate and set forth the changes. If we go to page 4 of the red line, this now, to put it in context, as you recall, this is one of the preconditions Clackamas Cove has to achieve before the agreement will be reinstated. And one of the things they did not achieve before was the 220-unit apartment project had to be under construction. There had to be a construction loan recorded and the building permits issued. So they have, under this document, a year to get that done. What they brought up was they wanted more flexibility to come back to the city and say, well, we didn't start the apartments, but we are prepared to start, say, an office building component of the project. And I had 2 concerns about giving them that flexibility. The first concern was that we looked to the apartment project to produce a certain increment of property taxes to fit into our overall financing structure. So if they come in with a proposed different portion of the project, it has to at least have the same amount of incremental taxes being produced. The second thing that I was concerned about, though, is I have no way of knowing what they might come back with, what portion of the project. Depending upon what portion of the project they come back with, it may change the risk that you have in going forward with the deal and investing the $7 million. So what I put in here was language that said not only do they have to come in with a project of equal assessment, but there has to be no different risk to the agency and the public investment, the $7 million, than the 220-unit apartment project as determined in your sole discretion. Risk is one of those things where you can't have an objective standard. So what I'm trying to say here is, as you may recall, the $7 million was supposed to go to do all of the work necessary to prepare the entire site for redevelopment. If, for example, they come in with a project that doesn't necessarily require that you spend all $7 million all at once, that's one of those risk factors. If they were to say, well, we'd still like you to spend all $7 million because it'll make this project easier or go better for us, they may be right. But you need the opportunity to exercise your judgment if they're coming in with something different than what they had originally proposed. So that's the reasoning behind their request and the reasoning behind my response to protect their interests. The next change is on the next page, section 3.2.8. And this comes about from a comment that Commissioner Neely brought up at the last hearing, where he was concerned about a couple of things. Having a paved parking area near the trailhead as part of the project, and having a pedestrian and bicycle pathway on the north side of this street that's going to be built that's called Main Street. And then there was also the proposition that a study by David Evans had made some recommendations with respect to the landscaping plan. I've not seen that report, but I have heard from Dave Leland that there's disagreement about the accuracy of certain elements of that report, such as the level of floodplain and other things. So what I tried to say here was, number one, they have to, if the master plan that is the land use plan that's been approved, if that doesn't already have this stuff in there, and I don't know that it does, because that's not been within my purview to review that. This document says, as a condition of reinstatement, there has to be a paved parking area in close proximity to the trailhead, a bicycle and pedestrian pathway on the north side of the to-be-built Main Street, and Clackamas Cove, where it's feasible, has incorporated revisions to the landscaping plan recommended in the David Evans Associate report, all to your reasonable satisfaction. Now, my intention by saying where it's feasible is, if in fact there are things that are incorrect about the Evans report, what they are recommending will not be feasible. And that's the way that I'm trying to deal with that and to address Commissioner Neely's concerns. The next change is on page 6. This is what your rights are during this one-year period where they're going to attempt to satisfy these conditions. This is the issue of, can you deal with other developers, and if so, to what extent? In my initial draft, I said basically, not only could you respond to developers or others who might be interested in this project or the property for another use, but you could actually make a deal with them. Clackamas Cove said that is going to make their life more difficult when they go to a lender and the lender says, well, we're not going to talk to you because there's another developer who's snooping around or something like that. There is certainly legitimacy to their point of view. They do, however, have the ultimate right to block any other developer, even if you made a deal with them, by actually meeting all the conditions to reinstatement. But that may not be sufficient to satisfy a lender. It is true that it may make it queasy for a lender to work with them on their project if there's the risk that somebody else might come along. So this document has been revised to say that you can respond to anybody who comes in the door and wants to talk to you about this project. You can't make a deal with them unless the deal is either acceptable to Clackamas Cove. And why would that be acceptable to them? Well, it may be because they recognize they can't fulfill their preconditions to reinstatement. Or alternatively, it may be a deal that doesn't involve the development of the whole project. It could be something as minor as you want to grant an easement to somebody that really doesn't affect their redevelopment of the project, or some other minor thing like that. You ought to be able to enter into that kind of an agreement. So that was the balance that we tried to strike here, and the staff's recommendation and Dave Leland's fairly strong recommendation on this point is that we work with them to take out your ability to enter into some other kind of an agreement with another developer. So I believe that summarizes the changes from the last draft that you saw, and I'd be happy to respond to any of your questions. Yes, Commissioner.
The document, I think, read in some way, and this is my words, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. We can't approach another developer, but another developer or Anderson approach the agency.
Correct.
I think we need some clarification as to who the we are. We talk about the agency, but sometimes, you know, we as individuals may have people approaching us, and I want you to talk about how we can deal with those issues if we have somebody approaching us individually.
I think this doesn't bind you in your individual capacities. It binds the agency, and the agency operates by the action of the majority of all of you sitting here. So each of you individually is free to go talk to anybody you want about anything. It would only be, this document only controls what the majority of the commissioners on the agency board might do.
You had some other questions?
Well, I did. One of which was 3.3.5, assuming it has numbering hasn't changed. I don't think so. I mean, you got something here Woodley that has something to do with it. When we had CCLLC before, I think we defined them in terms of Pacific Properties and Sladen. Woodley Properties, I might have missed something. Could you talk about that, or have?
They can talk about it better than I.
Okay.
But what I can tell you is that when we got very close to finalizing, or maybe even after we finalized the draft that we had signed before, Sladen and Woodley are related entities, as I understand it. And because they are related entities, we were told by Clackamas Cove that their partner in this may end up actually being Woodley rather than Sladen. And my recollection is that they're not just related, there's a congruence of ownership between the two entities. But I'd prefer that they explain that to you. That's what we were told.
Any other questions? Did you want to come up and explain now, or do we want to?
Any other questions of me then?
You know, one of the things that I did want to say to you is I've always been very impressed with your work, what you did at the Rivers and what you've done in this contract. I've been on their side of some of these kinds of deals, contracts, and how you've protected the public, the city, in these, I think, is commendable.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's my job.
Commissioners, my name is Todd Woodley. I'm president of Woodley Properties Incorporated and a 50% partner in Clackamas Cove LLC, and I'm also 50% ownership of Slade Construction Group Inc. And I guess one of the points that Mr. Janik brought up is, maybe I'm here to clarify that it is a common ownership in the stock of both companies. 100% of, my son and I, Michael, back there, we comprise 100% of Woodley Properties, and I comprise 50% of Slade Construction Group, and both are obligees on the agreement. So, may that answer this question for the Commission?
Anybody else have questions? Do you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I think that there was obviously a reconstitution of our agreement, so we are moving forward with everything at this time, the apartments and the overall project. So there was a point in time where we did not have everything on a full agreement, but that's been resolved, and we're moving everything forward. There's been another commitment, and I think I mentioned that the last time, of approximately $3 million that's gone into the project. So we are fully committed and totally expect to move everything forward.
So how's the market looking out there for moving this along?
Well, it's still very tough right now. The lending institutions are pretty negative. We've had conversations with 5 different entities. A couple of them are very positive. So it's a matter of really just nailing one down. The The overall market in terms of the office is very bad. That's probably 37% in the outlying areas. Downtown, I think it's around 17% vacancy factors. So we're not pursuing that actively. The apartments are doing very well. It's just a matter of finding somebody that's willing to release funds. It's a very unique time. I've been doing this for 45 years, and I've never seen anything like this. I've gone through 3 recessions, so it's a tough thing. But I think what we have here is a very unique project, and it's well capitalized. So if anybody can get it done, we will get it done. So it's just a matter of getting out there and doing the homework.
I should clarify that the Parker Pond parcel is no longer in foreclosure. We have a working relationship with Scott Parker, and it's actually been very good in the last 6 weeks. So.
And we went ahead and actually executed this document so that we're in full agreement with it. We appreciated the opportunity to modify it in some very small ways. Our expectation is to give us a little more flexibility if we had a large entity that came in and said, well, we would like to be a single user and own this office building, which is a potential. We've actually had a couple of people that we've talked about that. Then we could actually kick that portion of it off even sooner than the apartments. But right now, our focus is on the apartments.
Any commissioner have any other questions of these gentlemen?
I do. The issue of the high water mark has come up on, ordinary high water mark has come up on several occasions, and if the Corps of Engineer revisits that and sets another level, does that impact you really?
They actually have taken and gone back out there, and our understanding at this point that it's still as was defined. And we had John Van Stavern with Pacific Habitat that did exactly the approach that you're supposed to do, which is to go out and see where the actual physical area, how it is with the high water, and you actually take that data and you record it. And that was done per the Corps. The Corps went out, I think, 2 different times. They've gone out an additional time here in the last 2 weeks, and they've emailed Randy, and Randy coordinates that within our group, and said that they've got some new thoughts. But I don't think there'll be anything that will impact that because it's a very standard process that you're supposed to go through.
Commissioner Nocita.
Yeah, the discussion to this point has been on the details of this agreement. Can tie this to the original development agreement and the sequencing of project and constructions in the original development agreement. I want to propose something that I think makes everything the same in the end, but given some other exigencies we're experiencing in Oregon City, I'd like to make a proposal on sequencing the funding. I was really impacted and affected by the presentation on the circulation study last week. And the exigency is our bridge closure. And I thought that Donna Randula, the consultant, made a very credible case on the economic effects of getting a two-way traffic level on Main Street between 5,000 and 12,000 cars per day, and what that does to support retail on a street. And he gave the example of Belmont. And Portland is one of those streets, and our main street is not anywhere near that now. And he indicated by doing the two-way street system that it would be close but still wouldn't meet that threshold. And one of the discussions that came about in that is that with some planning, we could do signage, street improvements to get a percentage of the street traffic on 99, off of 99, and onto Main Street, so it could raise that level to the 5,000 to 12,000 vehicle trips per day threshold to really give Main Street a boost, particularly during the exigency of the bridge closure. And that would take some money, as we all know. And given that exigency, what I'd like to float as an idea as it relates to the Cove project is resequence the way that the line of credit is used.
my understanding is correct on the investments, we're making a $10 million investment in the Cove project. And between the apartments and all the other developments, there will be tax increment revenue generated that we can go back and spend downtown. One of the things that we're spending that $10 million on is grading for a park for condos and building pads that will occur in the future. And given the economy now, I think that part of the project is speculative. It's way too it's too attenuated when we have exigencies where we could use that kind of money now on our downtown and support our down property owners who are facing this bridge closure and build our retail capacity on Main Street. Mr. Zanuck made the point earlier that the apartment complex is supposed to generate tax increment. And the resequencing I would like to see if we could discuss is using the money that would otherwise go to grading and building pads for condos that are far off in the future, use that money for building that capacity to get that $5,000 to $12,000 vehicle trips diverted onto Main Street now when we have the need for it and we have the economic development capacity and all those cars that are passing by Oregon City on 99 but not going into downtown. And then when the apartments are constructed, use that tax increment to do the grading and building pads in the future when there is a market for condos sometime in the future, if there is. So I think, to me, it doesn't change the amount of money devoted to the Cove project. It just changes the sequence and timing by which that money is expended, allowing us to use some of that $10 million in the line of credit on a very pressing need to assist our downtown development.
Mr. North?
Yes, and that's a conversation I think for another day. We don't have the documents before us, and I think that's outside the purview of this decision. And I understand actually from Mr. Janik's conversation last time that while the termination and conditional reinstatement agreement is in effect, we will spend no money. So that's not really relevant to this evening. The resequencing, I think, again, sidebar. We have talked so much about the fact that we want to attract private developers, and talk about that over and over in our commission meetings. And I remember, I think Dave Lee was saying that every dollar in public investment should produce $5 or more in private investment, and this is what this is. I think this is a legitimate request to put this on hold, especially in the light of the investment that this private company has made at this time. I'm comfortable with Mr. Janik's assessment of the risk that the city is protected. And we're very good at, like you said, going down those bullet points, and the fact that the city will spend no money and then does have an opportunity to remain open for business if we're approached by additional development, I think is really it's a prudent business investment. So because of that, I would like to move the adoption of the termination conditional reinstatement agreement.
I'd like to make a comment if I might.
I'll second it.
Then I'll make a comment.
And that's on the revised
Red one.
red one. We have a motion in a second. Mr. Norris. Commissioner Mealy.
Both ends. Anyway, my understanding of what I'm just following up on what James is talking about. We're going to make an initial investment on Main Street to try to get two-way flow before the Arch Bridge closes. I presume we're not going to do much construction on Main Street during that closure. We would not want to inhibit the traffic that's produced on Main Street when the Arch Bridge is also closed. I think that would be detrimental to Main Street. So I assume a lot of the things we're talking on Main Street, other than the pullback of those extend-out areas and trying and get rid of some things that were made a two-way traffic flow. I don't know if there's going to be that much investment in that other 2-year period, because I don't think we want a bunch of equipment on Main Street and everything, what traffic flow we are able to produce during the bridge flow. That's assumption on my part.
I'm always in favor of funds for Main Street. You were where I was going to point to, Ms. Freshour. I know that there are hopefully potential for some of these funds from other places.
That's right. The timing, we've discussed these at the Main Street meetings as well, Commissioner Neely, and there's two ways of looking at it. You portrayed one way, and the other way is let's just get it all done at once. And it can be done, and we're on like suppressions 50, and there are no more construction vehicles on Main Street for who knows how long. But a lot depends on the funding. We have several funding applications in. The very short-term, the near-term projects, which we'll be looking at later this evening, ODOT, there's a possibility that ODOT will step up to the plate on those. There's a possibility they won't, but they're looking very hard for funding for that. And then there are the bridge opening projects, which to kind of complete all the circulation improvements. And then we also have applications in through the Transportation Enhancement Fund for doing either between 5th and 10th or between 10th and 15th. Then there's another ODOT flexible funds opportunity that we're going to apply for that they would be looking for shovel-ready projects that they would want us to be starting construction next fall. And we do have some design plans that we could wrap up and have ready to go. So the timing perhaps depends on the funding, and it depends on the desire of the community. So it's kind of complicated, but we could probably go a number of different routes. Maybe we do 10th to 15th initially, but a lot depends on the funding, of course. And we haven't.
Is there a way that we can separate this maybe from the motion? And
yes.
But I think it's a good point, Commissioner, to see today. And could we, in our next meeting, have staff bring us some options of?
Well, I think I'd like to respond to Mayor Norris's point, though, because I think she maybe inadvertently supported my argument by saying that during the pendency of this agreement, we're spending no money. That's exactly the point. We've got this money wrapped up in one project. All of this line of credit money wrapped up in one project that has struggled. That the major portion of it, the condominium project, when they're auctioning off condominiums in the South Waterfront, seems so far out in the future and speculative that I don't think it is responsible to tie that money up in something so speculative when there is a need for a pressing need given the exigency of a bridge closure on things in downtown Oregon City.
I think your point's well made, but I also personally think that if we can get those funds from some other place, that's the place we ought to get them rather than from urban renewal.
But that's speculative also.
But that's something we've been working on feverishly for the last couple of months, and it's in process.
And the point also is the sum total of the investment is the same. It's only the sequencing that's different.
Could I ask Mr. Janet to step up the next time? I'm asking a specific question. Separate discussion in terms of this motion here and of course we had a total of $10 million, about $7 million left of line of credit. Would there, in this period of time, be anything that preclude the agency for using some of that money outside of the whole project?
There's nothing that precludes you in this agreement from using your line of credit. You run the risk if you use it, and if Clackamas Cove LLC meets all the conditions, they would then come to you and say, under our contract, you have to go fund what's called the Phase 1, Phase 2 work, which is estimated currently to cost $7 million. Mm-hmm. And it would be no defense to them to say, we used it on something else. So there's nothing here that ties your hands to how you use the line of credit. But if you use it for whatever purpose, and it's gone, you have to recognize that you have a contractual commitment that you could be called upon within a year. But there's nothing that ties your hand.
But there's no contract until we vote on it. So whatever contractual commitment that you're talking about could be changed.
Well, until you sign this, right now, you are in a position where the development agreement you've already signed, it commits you to put up to $7 million. You could terminate that because they have not performed.
And alter that to the model that I've described, where the TIF revenue from the apartments is used for the grading at a later time. That could be renegotiated and redrafted, the original agreement.
Well, yes, you could, but you can also take some or all of the $7 million right now and use it for whatever purpose you want. But you have to figure a way to be prepared a year from now. The other point I would make, and I don't know the answer to this, is we don't know, because we don't have the expert here, what the amount of tax increment will be that will come off the apartments. Until you know what that tax increment amount will be, you don't know how much of the 7 is going to be replaced by the increment from the apartments. And then the other issue you need to think about is when the apartments start being under construction, there will be a hiatus of about 2 years before they are taxable, because it will be a commercial project under construction, and if it takes more than a year, the state law says you get 2 years where you're only taxed on the land value, not the improvements. So I think you want to quantify what the increment amount is and when it might come online. And I just don't know the answer to what the increment from that would be.
Do you have a concern about us adopting this agreement when we don't tax increment on the apartments is going to be?
This agreement does not depend upon you having the increment from the apartments in order to fulfill your obligation. The line of credit that was already in place is based on increment from all of the district, so it's not dependent upon the apartments.
But I guess the larger question is, should we do the deal at all when we don't know what we're getting for it?
I don't mean to ignore your question. I don't think it's a legal question. I mean, it's a business policy question for you to decide.
I believe those numbers were all part of the package.
They were. I was going to comment on that. Those numbers
and
were.
The increment, the estimated increment from the apartments was all part of when we got the line of credit, the whole study that was done. The other thing that you need to remember is what increment are you think you're going to get from doing what you're going to do on Main Street? Because redoing those roads and whatever is, yes, it will improve business. But as far as the actual assessed value of those properties that's going to provide an increment to pay back that money would, in my mind, be a little more questionable.
There is a, if I might, under measure 50, as I think we all know, there is a 3% per year cap on increases in the maximum assessed value of properties.
Yeah, and if you're not making the improvement to a property,
that's correct.
Then streets, then that cap is going to inhibit the same kind of multiple returns you're getting out of the other projects.
Well, the flip side of that view is that generating that type of vehicle traffic in building up Main Street would inspire people to do those full renovations where the value would increase beyond 3%.
Let's give one more question. That will be it for me, I think. Mr. Vero, in your ability to secure financing, I assume this available line of credit is a component in your discussion with the individuals you're talking to.
It's a major component. And there's a practical issue here relative to how that money is being spent in terms of moving the dirt. This is a balancing requirement for the floodplain, and to do that, it's a mass grading operation, and that's why it's being done all at one time. When you say, well, it's the condo pad takes up a frontage area, that frontage area, whether we're in place or you are the owner, has a lot of value because it's waterfront. Whether it's condominiums, whether it's going to be offices, whether it's going to be apartments, any number of things can be done there And obviously, we are looking at alternatives because of what's happening in that market right now with condominiums. Our expectation, that's potentially 2 to 3 years out. So we are looking at those options. But to say that you could spin off a portion of the funds and just do one piece, that's not really practical because of the need to move all the dirt. We've done that. We've spent over $750,000 doing that analysis, and we've done it several times with all kinds of options, and it is practical, not practical to do it in increments that you're suggesting.
I'm not suggesting it in increments. I'm suggesting not doing it until there's a market for it.
Well, to move the dirt, to do Main Street, you have to move dirt. To do the properties that are contiguous, you have to move dirt. So once you start moving dirt, you have to keep a balance, and that's probably the issue. And we can certainly have somebody that's a higher level of expert than myself come and explain that to you, but that's the way we've gone through it. It does take a need to push it all at one time.
Okay.
I'm going to call the question.
Okay. And then that calls the vote. Excuse me? Ms. Rager.
Again, Paul Edgar, Oregon City. It is too premature, there's too many contingencies to obligate the next administration to the next team that's going to come into Oregon City right now, and we're just a couple weeks short of an election. We're jumping the gun right now. This should be delayed until after the election at least. But more importantly, the contingencies that you and I both know that were kind of glanced over just now is scary. The Corps of Engineers now recognizes that the Freshwater Act that was used to adjudicate the ordinary high water mark cannot stand. The Rivers and Harbors Act has to be used. The Rivers and Harbors Act, when used by Clackamas County at Walgreen at the mouth of the cove right across the river, ended up with almost double, I'm not saying double, the ordinary high water mark that was adjudicated for the cove. So we know that even that then dramatically impacts the ability to do the cut and fill. So if anyone at this table enters into a vote at this time on something that is as highly speculative with as many contingencies as we do know as fact, and puts into jeopardy the next administrations and the next people, that would be very disingenuous and would be wrong. I really hope and pray that common sense, some intellectual integrity on knowing the facts and thinking them through would lead you all at this time to say, okay, let's take a deep breath. Let's find out what the Corps of Engineers actually is going to do. Let's think it out. Let's see what the voters have to say. Because I surely wouldn't want to have this hung around my neck when I know, in fact, that some of this just can't work. It's wrong. Please address that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rager. Okay, so we call a question.
Just before you make a motion, I wanted to make you aware of a letter from Dave Wheeler Consulting and enter that into the record.
Okay. Would you read that into the record?
I can read that, sure. It's a pretty long letter, so. I am out of the country and unable to attend tonight's important meeting. I do, however, as your advisor, want to convey my recommendation and encouragement regarding the decision to support and adopt the conditional reinstatement agreement. Based on this opportunity to establish quality mixed-use development in the downtown area, reclaim a neglected and problem site, establish community-serving waterfront resource, add significantly several new jobs, tax base, and other benefits, it is appropriate to keep this process moving forward without further delay. As you know, I have worked in many cities and with many small, large-scale projects. The world always watches as the city makes decisions. Cities get reputations for the ability to work or not work with the private sector. This is a time when no city can afford to make matters difficult for investors that want to come into a city with a quality project. The relationship between Oregon City and Pacific Property Search is a public-private partnership. City encouragement has been very strong up to and during most of this recession and the period preceding the recession. As I noted at the last meeting, there are no other cities in the state of Oregon that have two such projects still moving forward. At this time, Oregon City is without precedent in such efforts. As public-private partnerships, it is an important time to operate with consistent and honorable standards in support of the combined efforts of the city and the developer, and the need to send a very strong signal to the world that Oregon City is a progressive city, plans for the future, and is willing to take business-like, calculated, legally supported risks in support of significant goals, capital leverage, jobs, tax base, quality life, and related benefits. I urge the Commission to keep this project moving forward such that PPS will not lose any more time with its effort at recapitalization and the pursuit of early projects within the plan that will generate tax increment while meeting the stringent requirements of the agreement. I strongly discourage any language that would have the city seeking other developers, or worse yet, issuing an RFP during the 12-month agreement period. Such a provision can seriously damage the efforts of PPS to achieve its objectives. Within the context of private-public partnerships, I would view such actions as damaging to the project and to the city and of no value, since no developer will spend significant money when the conditional agreement is enforced. A bit blunt perhaps, but I will be firm and never lose sight of who we serve, the citizens and the city of Oregon City. We are your advocate, and that means using best efforts to secure meaningful investments for the city while assuring the city is protected. Working closely with your staff, with Baljanik, LLP, and others, I'm confident that Oregon City is very well protected. Signed, Dave C. Leland.
Okay, are we ready to vote now?
Yep.
Please.
Commissioner Nocita?
No.
Commissioner Neely?
Yes.
Commissioner West? Aye. Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Yes.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Chair Slack?
Aye. That, yeah, we got a 7-1? 6-1. Oh, that's right, we have 2. 6-1 in favor, the motion passes. Okay. Now we have minutes of October 6, 2010 regular meeting.
Move for approval?
Second.
We have a motion and second discussion. All in favor? No.
Commissioner Nocita?
Aye.
Commissioner Neely?
Aye.
Commissioner West? Aye. Commissioner Norris?
Aye.
Commissioner Shaw?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Chair Slack?
Aye. That would be 7 in favor, 0 against. The motion passes. City manager's report. We're able. You made it.
I'm here.
No report? Okay. We're done.